My guest today is former Alabama Attorney General and Lieutenant Governor of the state of Alabama, Bill Baxley, also a very good friend, and a dying breed, a Democrat whose name is etched in Alabama history for a variety of reasons. Today, with a governor's race between Doug Jones and Tommy Tuberville looming in the background, national writers are talking about the Alabamification of American politics, a term my friend Kyle Whitmire has been using for years. I want to ask Bill Baxley the same questions I spoke with former Governor Jim Folsom with last week, and it boils down to whether or not a Democrat can still win a statewide election in Alabama. I hope you enjoy the show. Good day, everyone. Welcome to The Real Truth. I'm Tommy Spina. Today's guest is Bill Baxley. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Thanks, Tommy. Appreciate you inviting me.
I apologize for taking up your time today, but you are a figurehead in Alabama, and you have formerly served in the position of lieutenant governor, and also you were the youngest attorney general at age 28 that Alabama has ever had. We have a very contentious governor's race coming up. There are a variety of issues at stake, or not necessarily at stake, but that are being considered. One is the residency of Mr. Tuberville, which seems to be evidenced to be actually in Florida versus Alabama, and whether or not a Democrat can actually win a state election. So for starters, let's talk about the residency issue. For example, that case is currently in the state of Alabama court system and the Circuit Court of Montgomery County awaiting the judge's order. So proposed orders have been submitted by both parties. Whether she denies or grants the motion to dismiss that was filed by Tuberville, it is anticipated that this case is going to end up in the Alabama Supreme Court. It is also anticipated, or at least thought about, is the Alabama Supreme Court, which is 9-0 Republican voter, going to recuse itself. Now, I know from talking to you before that you believe that the decision of whether or not he's a resident of Alabama, if the courts do not follow the rule of law, because it seems so obvious in the Constitution as written, that the voter gets a second bite at the apple, so to speak. So can you talk about how you think in terms of that residency requirement and the Constitution as it is written?
Sure. I think that every voter ought to, before they go vote in this governor's race, take just a very few minutes to read what the Alabama Constitution says is the requirement to be governor of Alabama. It doesn't have that requirement for being U.S. Senator from Alabama. It does have the requirement in the Constitution itself that you have to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the requirements are very clear. And Coach Tuberville does not meet them. And everybody, if they would, and there's a reason for that being in the Constitution. It's not in there to be a U.S. Senator from Alabama. You don't have to live in Alabama for X number of years. But you do to be governor of Alabama, because to be an effective U.S. Senator, you can be an effective U.S. Senator without knowing that much about how Alabama's different areas had different histories and different backgrounds and it was settled differently. But to be governor of Alabama, you've got to work with the legislature of Alabama, and that's 105 representatives from 105 districts over Alabama, roughly equal in population. 35 senators that represent 35 Senate districts in Alabama, and you've got to know the differences in the backgrounds and the history of those areas of the state, and you've got to know the people that are elected and get to know them anyway in the legislature to be effective. If you can't work with the legislature and get the legislature to do things that you think they should do, you're not going to be a good governor. You can't be an effective governor. And you got to know something about Alabama, and that's why it's got the requirements that you got to live here X number of years before you can be governor, and yet you don't have to do that to be a U.S. senator. And it's not just for the courts to decide that. It's for the people, the voters, to say, why is this in the Constitution? And the answer is because you need to have this background to be an effective governor of Alabama. And so it's also not an opinion just for the courts. It's an opinion for each voter to make and read what the Constitution says and make up their own mind as voters whether or not Coach Tuberville is obeying the Constitution of Alabama when he's even running to be governor of Alabama, because clearly he does not meet the requirements, that he is trying to mislead people by trying to pretend that he does meet them.
Well, it's like you have said to me before, you need to know the difference between how people feel on Sand Mountain and how they feel on Mobile Bay or how they feel in Houston County. If you're not from here, and the only time you've ever spent here was spent in Auburn, Alabama, long ago, how do you really relate to those two diverse sections of our state? Seemingly, it would be impossible. Uh, and I think he's just clinging to the Trump template, is what I call it, or the Republican template, to try to sneak in through the back door. And I think the Republican Party, intra-party, is allowing that to happen and ignoring what you just spoke about, and that's the Alabama Constitution. You agree?
I don't think it I want you to say it's a Republican issue versus a Democratic issue, because let me say this, it's a qualification issue. And I am a Democrat, but if the choice to be governor of this state were between Doug Jones and Coach Tuberville, and Doug Jones were running as a Republican, and Coach Tuberville was running as a Democrat, even though I was a Democrat, I would find it very, very hard to vote for Coach Tuberville, because I would know that Doug Jones, the Republican, was so better qualified and more and able to be governor of this state. And so I think that it's got much more to do with the qualifications of the individuals and their backgrounds than it does by being have a party label on it.
Well, I think Coach Tuberville's proven he was somewhat of a do-nothing obstructionist in the U.S. Senate because he got in the way of a lot of things.
Tommy, the worst thing that I know of that any U.S. Senator we have ever had has done was when Coach Tuberville got up there and he held up the promotions for all of the military, high-ranking military officers in the United States. For some reason, because the Army had put something about abortions or something for the female. I can't remember what it was, but Coach Tuberville put at risk the defense of this country by his stubbornness and trying to do this thing where he held up the promotion, I think, general officer.
Yeah, it was
Everybody that was promoted.
It was at
I've never
very high
known
level.
any U.S. senator, certainly not from Alabama, that's done anything more dangerous than what he did for a long time. And you had a lot of Republican senators going on television on the nightly news begging him to quit doing that, and he wouldn't. He was stubborn and wouldn't do it. And I think that that needs to be brought up over and over and over again.
Well,
it ain't excusable.
Well, the lawsuit pending regarding residency in the state of Alabama under some Latin words I haven't really heard since law school, and I don't think I even knew what they meant then nor now, except I asked Mr. Ragsdale what it meant, is being brought on behalf of two veterans. And I think that's really symbolic. That stubbornness, how would that translate to a governor being of that mindset? Think about that for a minute. You just triggered a thought in my brain. We would end up with a do-nothing state.
Well, that's just another of the many reasons that the choice is so clear, and it has nothing to do, in my mind, with parties. The choice is so clear between the qualifications and ability to serve, ability to get things done between Doug Jones and Coach Tuberville.
Well, essentially, you're saying he's not up for this job. Tuberville is not up for this job, and that he's not qualified.
I'm saying that if this were a football game and the qualifications of the person, and it was that much of a marked difference between two of your people who are going to start for quarterback, then you would pick, as the coach of the team, you would always pick the quarterback that had the skills that, like Doug Jones has the political skills and the common sense skills about government, over somebody like that has none of them. And it's shown through his career that he has none of those skills about governing.
And to the
Coach Tuberville, I think, was a pretty good coach. He beat Alabama pretty well, five or six times, I think. But this is not coaching a football game. This is much more complicated than 60 minutes of playing and quite a bit of time of preparation for the game. This is what you got to do is working with a legislature, working with other county, with governments at county level, working with governments at city level, working with big cities, working with small, almost villages, and trying to get things to run smoothly for our state as a whole. And you've got to have some familiarity with it. And I don't think Coach Tuberville has shown that he's got that familiarity with government. He certainly hasn't been that effective a senator. He hasn't been effective at all, in my opinion.
And what little bit of effect he has had in the Senate, that skill set doesn't translate to being the governor of a state. That's a total different skill set. If he had a skill set at all. Because you don't normally see somebody going backwards, going from the Senate to the governorship. You generally see, you usually see it going the other way.
Exactly. You find governors every year, every election year, running to go to the U.S. Senate. You don't hardly ever find a senator wanting to leave the Senate to come run for governor. You got to ask yourself why.
I do. I was just about to ask you what's the motivation, I wonder. Uh, Power, ego? I don't
I
know.
think uh, I think being ineffective in the Senate, he wants to. He's one of 100, and I think maybe one of the least effective. I know, not maybe. He is one of the least effective of the 100 senators up there. So he wants to come back where he's got no competition. There's only one governor of Alabama.
Yeah.
He's not competing against 99 others.
Well,
He's competing against 50 others to try to bring things in for Alabama. But that's like playing a football game against different teams. You're competing against them.
Yeah.
You and Doug share some commonality aside from the fact that you've known each other probably as long as me and you have known each other. You both have and have exhibited tremendous empathy, compassion for violations that occurred during the civil rights era before the Civil Rights Act was enacted. You prosecuted a Klansman over the church bombing, and Doug picked that torch up when he became U.S. Attorney. Can you tell my listeners a little anecdote about the dynamics of that case and how Doug uh, originally participated in your skill set, watching you prosecute, and then ultimately, I think it's a fascinating story. I think people would be
Sure,
interested in
Tommy.
hearing about it.
Sure. That is all right. When we indicted Robert Chambliss, he was the ringleader of the bombing where the little girls were killed at the 16th Street Baptist Church in 1963. And so the Attorney General was chief prosecutor in the state. And when I came in, I wanted to try to solve that case. I thought it had been a blot on Alabama. I thought it had been one of the worst crimes that had been gone unpunished, or maybe the worst that I knew of, killing 4 little innocent children in a house of worship that had done nothing. And so I got our office to start work on it, and we finally were able to make a case against the ringleader, Robert Chambliss, who was known as Dynamite Bob because he had participated in, they thought, 47 dynamitings around Birmingham over a couple of decades. And so we were able to convict Chambliss, and then I went out of office, and we had some good people that came in after me, but they didn't pick up on the case. There were still 2 people out there that were still alive that had been in on the bombing with Chambliss. There had been 4 of them originally.
What year?
Died.
What year did you prosecute as AG?
I started working on the case in 71, and we finally brought him to trial in 77. It took 6 years.
Right.
But when we tried him in Birmingham, the jury found him guilty, first-degree murder. And so there were still 2 more out there that were alive, that had, 2 of the bombers. There were 4 of them that went over and set the bomb. One of them died. The other 2 were still out there. And even though we had good people that came in as Attorney General, it was a tough case, and so it wasn't followed up on after I left. And what I didn't know at that time, I wish I had, because I would have felt better over the years. When I left office, there were still those two that were walking around that I knew were guilty of murder. There was a kid in law school at Cumberland Law School in Birmingham, and he cut class every day and came and watched every minute of that trial. And I didn't realize at the time, but it turned out that kid was Doug Jones, and 20-something years later, he was the U.S. Attorney, the state of Northern District of Alabama. And as U.S. Attorney, he had the benefit of working with the FBI, which we weren't able to work with him when I was Attorney General, but Doug was able to work with him.
Well, Hoover didn't like it, did he? As I recall. Herbert,
No,
J. Edgar.
Hoover had good points and bad points, but that's neither here nor there. But Doug came in, and the federal statute of limitations had run. You couldn't make a federal case. So he got with Bill Pryor, who was Alabama Attorney General, and Bill Pryor appointed Doug, who was the U.S. Attorney, as a special assistant Alabama Attorney General. And Doug, who had watched every second of that trial, came in, worked with the FBI and the state authorities and the county and city authorities, and brought cases against the other two 20-something years after we tried Chamlin, and convicted both of them. And all three of the bombers died that killed those little girls. All three of them died in an Alabama prison.
Wow.
And that was due to the last two was due to the hard work Doug did. And I thought back on it. I wish I had known that during those 20 years that kid watching us try that case was going to come in and finish the job I couldn't finish.
I don't remember exactly what year that was that Doug did that, but
it was around 99 or 2000, 2001. That's when he was able to do it.
I know I graduated law school in 78, so that makes me older than Doug, I guess.
Yeah. You're older than Doug.
So can you equate voters with jurors?
Yeah, I think so. I think jurors, by and large, overwhelmingly, if you're careful with checking who your potential jurors are, if you get an impartial jury, which is what you want, way more times than not, juries will do the right thing. And I think more times than not, voters do the right thing, or what they think is right. I don't think anybody deliberately goes and votes for somebody that they think is a bad person. I think sometimes their reasoning, they don't take their vote as seriously as they take their jury duty. I do believe that people take their jury duty more seriously than they take their vote. But if people would consider the qualifications of the people they vote for, rather than some matter that's petty or even party matters or something like that, if they would consider their vote as well as they would, as jurors consider their duty sitting in the jury box, I think we'd elect better public officials by and large, because people would realize that their vote was important and did matter. And anybody that would do that would consider the qualifications of the candidates. And anybody in this race it realizes what a important job for everybody in the state the governor is, who the governor is, and how he or she is qualified to do it. If you match these qualifications between these two candidates, Doug Jones and Coach Tuberville, there is no question who is the most qualified, who is the most experienced, and who would be most able to make the state run in an efficient manner. And Coach Tuberville may be much better as a football coach than Doug would be, but he wouldn't be better as a public official. And Coach Tuberville's got a record as a public official in the Senate, and it hadn't been very good either.
Well, actually, it's been exactly the opposite. It's been very bad for the most part.
I agree.
Particularly what you mentioned, holding up the military promotions single-handedly.
Those military promotions is one of the worst things I've ever known of a U.S. senator doing.
So if you're running Doug's campaign, and there are a couple of issues out there that Doug talks about, I don't know where Tuberville falls on this, but would you be focused on things like Medicaid expansion, rural hospitals, the healthcare deficiencies in some parts of our state that exist? And did those things exist when you were in office back then?
They've always existed since we've been a country, but I think that
well, Alabama's always been
more. I think they're more crucial right now than they were when I was coming along, because we had after the Depression, we made some tremendous strides in America, and after World War II, and our healthcare system became the best in the world, I think. But it's the last few years, I don't think it's any longer the best in the world, and I think we've got to provide. I think that's the most important, crucial issue that's facing us right now. That's just one of many, many issues that's facing the state. We recently had a grocery tax in place that was, or some legislation that put a stop to grocery tax. However, it ran out and didn't get renewed. So when you're cutting taxes, you have to figure out some way to replace that income, don't you? As a governor, or it's like running a business, I would think. You have to have money coming in to pay for the things that are going out. So yes, you need a balanced budget. You don't need to be going into debt.
I think Doug has talked about having maybe a lottery. And when I say lottery, I'm not talking about sports betting. I'm talking about a standalone lottery like every state surrounding Alabama has. Do you think that's probably not a bad idea?
I think it's certainly a good idea to let the people vote on it and let people decide whether they want one or not. It's a lottery is a voluntary tax, is what it is. And it's one where you don't make anybody buy a lottery ticket, but it provides a sum of money that people choose to participate in. That I very much believe that. Well, I've seen evidence of it for years. I lived in Dothan, and you had a lottery. We border on Florida. And people would leave by, droves from Houston and the other counties bordering Florida and go down there and buy Florida lottery tickets and just pour money into Florida for them to use for their programs. That if Alabama had a lottery, we keep it home. But we're one of the only states around that does not have a lottery, and they won't even give the people the right to vote on it. I think the people would pass it overwhelmingly, but I think that's another issue that Doug and Coach Tuberville will probably differ on. I don't know.
You know, you both, you and Doug both prosecuted Klan members, and I think Doug, while he was senator, actually got some legislation passed relating to that. It's been said that Tommy Tuberville, his critics say that he's shown very little grasp on the policy, just policy, the policy of governing. And we have that contrasted to Doug Jones, whose short tenure in the Senate established that he can step up to the plate and swing the bat. That's what I always told my daughter when she was playing softball. You got to swing the bat. You can't just take pitches. And that's what I see, Tuberville clinging to the Trump type template versus really focusing on the problems that our state has that need addressing and need governance to make that happen, which ties into what you were talking about in terms of dealing with the local state representatives and state senators. You got to be there to be able to appreciate what it takes to make that happen. You got to lead in that instance.
Well, you got to know what to do and when to do it. I'm sure Coach Tuberville's a likable person in person, but he and Doug is too. Both of them are likable, I'm sure. But Doug knows how to get things done, and that's where the governor has got to not just be likable. He's got to know how to get things done. And Doug Jones knows that as well as any candidate we've ever had for governor. I don't think Coach Tuberville has any idea how state government is run. I really do not believe he knows, and I don't think he has any desire to learn.
Well, if you track what he's not done in the Senate, it's an easy comparison, because if you move that skill set, shift it to the state of Alabama, it's a do-nothing kind of leader, to me.
Yes, absolutely, but 100 times more pressing in Alabama, because the governor has got to be not just one of 100 members. He's got to be the leader. He's got to be out front, the one making everything come together and making it go. And Doug can do that, make it go in the direction it ought to go for the good of the people of Alabama and the advancement of the services that Alabama has for our citizens.
Every now and then I wonder as well, Bill, because I'm not happy with what I see our country, what's happening in our country. And I'd like our country back. I don't want it to be back where it was, because where it was is how it got to where it is. But I just feel like...
Well, you've got a point there. But I think that we need to keep this election between... we can't solve every problem in the country and in the world this election in Alabama for governor, but we can solve some things about Alabama, but that's between two people, and one of them's named Doug Jones and one of them's named Tommy Tuberville. And I think the choice is so clear, the qualifications, the experience, the ability is so clear that it's an easy decision.
Well, I thank you for being with me today. This is the real truth. Thank you, Bill Baxley. Have a nice night, sir.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you inviting me.
Thank you for joining me today on The Real Truth. My name is Tommy Spina. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. I hope you will follow or subscribe to my podcast and listen in to the next episode. If you found it valuable, please take a moment to rate it and review it. It helps us to reach more listeners that care about the issues that matter. Share it with a friend. Stay engaged and remember, the truth matters. I'll see you next time.